Today I'll be talking about my webcomic, which I made around the summer of this year for the short story contest by WEBTOONs. Even though I didn't end up finishing, this video will show you the creative process, the ups and downs, and the overall gist of what it takes to build a mediocre narrative in form of webcomics or manga. Stick around to the end of the video because I'll be giving information on my new webcomic that I'm working on, which is going to be a lot better and more realized than what I'm about to analyze right now. And if you enjoy the video at any point, be sure to subscribe. It's free and it helps me out. Around May of this year, I discovered a short story contest in webtoons.com, which is the premier site for webcomics, and it basically said to create a love or a thriller webcomic that consists of 5 or so chapters, and the top prize would get $10,000. During that time, I'd never actually used any digital software to create art. All I'd ever used was pencil and paper to create comics when I was younger, but since it was the beginning of quarantine, I said, screw it, let me just do it anyways. The contest was set to conclude at the end of June, which gave me roughly 3 months to get 5 chapters of a webcomic out before the deadline. I thought, okay, that should be pretty easy, and young naive me decided to set out on my new webtoon adventure. And let's just say, it was a disaster. If you guys want to read the webcomic just so you could have a better understanding of what I'm talking about, it's the first link in the description and it's called Pretty Sweet. Pretty Sweet is a story about a famous musician that is suffering from writer's block while trying to write for his newest album, when he remembers a girl from the past that he once knew but lost contact with when he started getting notoriety as a musician. The story is supposed to take place between 2 time periods, the first being in the present where the main character is successful but struggling creatively, and the second being 5 years into the past where the main character met his first love, and is supposed to explore themes of people growing apart without any particular reason, as well as the negative implications of pursuing wealth and fame. I wrote the story and the key beats of the story in about 2 weeks, and I barely had any time to revise any of the key points so that it would be more cohesive, but I thought it was a pretty decent enough story to greenlight. Obviously, looking back at it, there's some things that just didn't make any sense. Why is the MC struggling to make new music? How could the MC forget such a pivotal time in his life? Why is he smoking cigarettes unironically? There's a lot of things that I didn't explore fully that should have been explored more so that the story would make sense. But since I was already on a time constraint and I also needed to draw 5 chapters worth of pictures, I said, screw it, let's just go on with the rest of the production. Next was art style. I knew 3 months was a very short amount of time to complete a webcomic, and looking at the submissions from the veterans of WEBTOON, it made me question even more why I decided to embark on this quest. So in the end, I decided to say screw the mainstream webcomic art styles and design and use an art style that is easiest and fastest to draw. I'm not very good at digital art or art in general. I can't do this or this. I can't do anything super complicated. And also, if the characters are too detailed, I would probably just give up because I'd spend the whole day working on this one page and just get too lazy to do everything else. So I thought a simplistic art style would suffice and match the theme of what I was going for. Since I was going for like a Shakespearean tragic love story because I was in my feelings during the time, I took inspiration from a few artists and webcomics that had a very similar and simplistic style. A few artists that inspired my art were Yuribo, Yu Nagaba, and Subong Park, who made a webcomic with a very similar art style and did it way better than I could have ever done. With the overall story and art style being set, all I had to do was the storyboard. However, I just didn't do it. I felt that it was going to take too long and I already had a set deadline and it was pretty tight, and I felt as if the end product's art style wasn't that complicated compared to what I'd drawn on the storyboard, so I just said screw it and decided to go off the dome and just start drawing stuff. So without a proper script or storyboard, and only a list of the sequence of events helping me, I decided to dive in headfirst and swim with the sharks and just go with drawing the pictures. This ended up being one of the biggest mistakes of the whole process. First of all, storyboards are very important because if you mess up a few things, you can just draw over it and clean it up before you finally decide on what works. Dialogue is also very hard to do off the dome, and you usually change it during the storyboarding process multiple times just to make it sound natural, but since I said screw the storyboard, I had to just do the dialogue off the dome without any revisions, which made the dialogue sound really corny and really unnatural. The first chapter I made took around 2 weeks because I had to constantly rearrange and redo panels because I just didn't have a proper storyboard. So in essence, drawing without a storyboard so that I wouldn't waste time ended up wasting more time because I had to redo a bunch of stuff for it to actually make sense. With only 6 weeks remaining, I plan to do a chapter a week and pump it out, but the first chapter took 2 weeks, so if I kept that pace up, I'd only get 3 chapters done in time for the deadline. But I actually got 0 done. because after the first chapter, it really hit my confidence level that I could actually do this, because the first chapter came out kind of really mediocre. And I felt that if I kept this pace up, the whole webcomic would just be complete garbage, which I guess it turned out to be. And so I crashed. I crashed hard. I crashed because of my own self-consciousness, probably because I realized then that the webcomic was kind of garbage. So for the next 3 weeks, I sat in sorrow and wallowed in my own self-pity. And then the guilt hit. About a week before the deadline, I had a sudden urge, a tick of motivation to continue. I actually don't remember why, but for the next week I was going off. Day, night, Kid Cudi, pumping pages in and out, I was on a roll. And just like that, the end of June rolled by. Minutes before the deadline, I completed the second chapter. Yeah, I completed the second chapter. There's no way I was going to complete the whole story in that time, especially since I took a 3-week pee break. And I also realized halfway through that second chapter that 5 chapters was not enough to conclude this story with it making sense. I finished the second chapter and submitted what I had. Actually, I didn't even get to submit it in time because my computer crashed. Not that it would have mattered anyway because I didn't finish, but right now I can sadly say that there are 2 chapters of Pretty Sweet on the WEBTOON website. Overall, I see this project as something that I'm grateful I did, even though I didn't finish it, because I learned a lot of things along the way. Yeah, I know this is gonna be like really corny, cliche ending, but just hear me out. Even though I made mangas and stuff in the past, this was the first time I ever tried to do a webcomic format, which has a lot of interesting composition techniques and stuff that you can't really do in any other medium. Like the sequence where our main character is playing the piano, the passage of time is shown through the scrolling notes that are being portrayed in a vertical manner, and then it's suddenly broken by a broken note. This is one of the more basic examples of what you can do with this type of format that's really interesting to me. You can't really do this the way it's done here in any other platform, which makes webcomic formatting very different and very unique from other platforms. I think with polish, this webcomic could have been okay, I guess, but the biggest thing that I learned is that when you try to create your own story, you learn a whole new appreciation of stories. There are so many aspects that you don't notice while just reading that I started to realize when I started to make my own comics, and I realize now how hard it is to keep everything tied up. I learned a lot because of the mistakes I made, and after analyzing it after leaving it on the shelf for a few months, it's really refreshing to see what type of mistakes I made and what types of things I've learned. And for my next webcomic, which is going to be in the format of a shonen/seinen manga, it'll be much better told and much better fleshed out. Speaking of which, here it is. In a world much like My Hero Academia's, where 90% of the population possesses some sort of power, there exist people that go beyond the powers they possess and use it for virtue. These people are called professional heroes. However, the road to become a professional hero is a road that involves manipulation, struggle, nepotism, and most importantly, luck. Hiro, our main character, is one of those people that from a young age was just built different, possessing insane amount of power that truly transcended his peers. But now at the age of 25 and living his life as a social recluse who never leaves his house unless it's absolutely necessary, we see his road to find meaning in a world that once praised him but now rejects him. That's the synopsis for my new webcomic/manga story, and the first chapter will be coming out very incredibly soon. If you enjoyed the story and you want to be updated, follow me on Twitter because I'll be releasing information all on there. And if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a sub or a like or a comment, whatever you feel like doing, because it helps me out a lot. Thank you for watching.